when life feels terrible and terribler and seems to be getting worse and worser. Welcome, or maybe welcome back. I am Anne Headley, and this is my podcast, What is Going On Anyway? This time on the podcast, I address recent events and make a strong attempt to find meaning during this full moon lunar eclipse time. Once again, it's full moon time. This is the hunter's moon, the full moon in October. And right now in the world, this is a tender time. It's been already a difficult 2 weeks. And on top of that, there's been a mass shooting in Maine, and everyone, everywhere, seems to be wondering how life has gotten so bad. Why do we allow this kind of destruction? Why are people being hurt so badly and families torn apart? Who benefits from this? Recently, I've been paying attention to the thin veil separating the living and the dead. This is the right time for that, right? I did have a beautiful ceremony with a friend on the eclipse where we put some flowers and candles and water. It was a beautiful, quiet spot to honor this huge unknown. We just don't know what's over there. We don't know what happens to our dead. But we can try to connect with that. We can try to connect ourselves with those we love who have passed. Since our last podcast, the war continues in Israel and Gaza. In many ways, it's not just the world events, but I've been really feeling, a lot of my friends I've been talking to have been really feeling so much heartbreak, so much grief over the state of the world, the climate, this sense of helplessness. So while these weeks have been intense, and I often look for some relief in these readings, I'm afraid this full moon really isn't giving us relief. But perhaps it is showing us how strong we can be in grief and how much we understand what is essential when things fall apart. Curiously, looking back on many of the podcasts from this year, we've been asked through the oracle to find our people, look for our creativity, figure out who we are, because I think we're being asked to step up to create a new world together. We can only really do that when we know how to stand in our own 2 feet and we know what gifts we have, which are abundant, that we can be generous with to each other as we create a new way of taking care of ourselves, our families, our communities, and in effect, the world. My mom has hinted at me, or maybe she said it outright. She doesn't really like that I use the I Ching with these podcasts. She thinks I'm hiding behind the I Ching, and I'm not so sure about it. So I'm going to show you this time how I use it, and I'll let you decide. It is true that I'm a lot afraid of being predictive or fully intuitive or psychic here and doing it out loud. I can do it privately or in a silly way or undercover, but really saying, I know, there's something about that feels spooky to me. I don't know about the word spooky, but the funny thing is I'm always hiding from being called witchy, or I'm just terrified that I will be too much and that it will be not safe for me. So because I do feel scared to kind of be upfront about what actually comes easily and naturally to me, when I really look at it and stand back a few feet and not be so scared about it, I realize that that is exactly what I encourage in other people. So what that means for me, I'm just pulling it all together here. What that means for me is that I need to accept my power, which looks very witchy, and that scares me. It makes me feel unsafe. So I'm practicing over and over again here. Maybe it's safe to express myself fully. And when I express myself fully, it does include the things that I think are a little bit more witchy. And so there's something for me to unpack around that word. I'm going to do that later. I don't have time for that right now. I got to get back to the point. And the point is, yes, I'm afraid. I would rather seem that I'm just very highly intellectual, but it's not true. It's not that I'm not smart. It's just that I'm not creating these ideas that flow through me. I just like ideas. And very often they will just come to me. I grab onto them and I talk about it. And I am good at making connections. And I guess, yes, I can own that. I'm good at making connections. But these ideas, it's just grace that comes through me. So here we are, and I'm facing this full moon cycle. We're ending an eclipse cycle, and it feels like we've been through the ringer. We've got another cycle of political unrest with everything else that's been happening in Ukraine, adding the Israel and Hamas war on top of it, and the recent mass shooting in the United States. We're seeing so much destruction. It's frustrating. It's so difficult to build things and to see them be destroyed in a flash. It's almost impossible to integrate that. And I can see how destructive force has a purpose. Like with my divorce, it's like everything fell apart so that rebuilding could actually happen. I see that. But in my divorce, we weren't bombing each other's homes. I actually managed to avoid the truly destructive acts that I considered and didn't execute. I think I'll tell you about them. I had 2 strong fantasies that I did not act on. One was go to my ex's very neatly folded t-shirts and carefully cut them in half, but leave the collar intact so that they looked perfect in their folded column, but they were useless if you pulled them out as a shirt. That was one fantasy. I guess I really held on to that one. I didn't do anything. That was just a thought. And the second one was to collect some dog poop and tape it in a Ziploc bag, like under that dresser with the t-shirts, or like under his car seat. And so it wouldn't be an obvious thing. It would be like hard to tell. It would be like sort of a constant odor of poop. Anyway, I didn't do that. I did get a lot of pleasure out of imagining those pranks, but I never, ever wanted to enact them. I really do want healing and relief. I don't want to perpetuate acts of harm to myself or to others. And this is one of the big problems of the world. How do we end cycles of harm and destruction? I mean, destruction, composting, recycling, all of that is necessary. But I think there's ways of having things fall apart that aren't destroying each other with anything produced by the military industrial complex. Now that a lot of my acute pain of divorce has healed, I'm so, so grateful that somehow I had the resources to feel the pain and not act on that pain. We still have a big job to do as co-parents, and we need as much cooperation and friendliness as we can accumulate after such a big loss. I'm usually trying to bring big issues into focus with the ways I make daily personal decisions. I ask myself, where are my wars? Where do I consistently fight? Who do I consistently fight with? That would be, I fight with myself the most. And how do I insist on taking space, occupying and displacing other beings? It's a big question, of course, and there's lots of ways of looking at it. But I'm going to give you one example, one way that I think about it. We've got chickens. Every year around this time, we notice the brown rats want to move into the chicken house. And we don't want them in the chicken house. I don't want to share the grain that I give to the chickens with the rats. I don't want to eliminate rats in the world. I just don't want them in the chicken house. And how do I enact this? There are so many different ways of doing it. Early on, I always wanted to trap them in have-a-hearts and move them somewhere else. And then I started to get overwhelmed, and that wasn't a method that was working for me. So the solution in this moment is to use snap traps. Well, I also do animal communication, so I do some animal communication with the rats, but I don't go in too deep because it's a lot of pain. I'm destroying rat families, and I'm trying to make clear decisions, and I'm trying to be clear with the rats. I don't want you here. You're welcome to move on somewhere else. So how do I keep my moral compass here? How do I make this okay? And I really struggle with this because it's really easy for me to say it's not okay for countries to bomb each other. But I am here making decisions that are life and death decisions for other beings. So it's complex, and I'm just trying to feel my way through it. And I'm sorry, I don't have any answers around that. But on to using my sense of predictions, letting my witchiness come to the forefront. Let's experiment. I will throw the I Ching after this so that I'm not doing it in reverse, which I often throw the I Ching first and then I talk about it. So I'm going to ask myself, or really my extended self, the one who feels into the world, Big Anne, can you help us understand this particular moon cycle and what is most helpful for us to know right now? And this is what I got, guys. I wrote it out because this was the only way for me to separate it. I don't think I can just speak it out. I'm not ready yet. Yes, it's been particularly hard. But do you remember when all the dark secrets were so deeply hidden? Do you remember being younger and just knowing that adults weren't telling you the truth? This way the world is showing up, and the way you're receiving it is a kind of maturity. And yes, it sucks. But also, there's been a deep, long-standing desire for this way of seeing what is really in the shadows. The darkness has purpose. We need it. But right now is a huge moment of discernment. What is the true darkness and what has been hiding in the shadows in order to not be seen? Those two things need to be told apart from one another. Do you understand that? The darkness has meaning, balance, offers relief. We don't want to eliminate it. We want to honor the dark. But in order to really do that, we have to see. We have to look, probably without our eyes. probably we have to evaluate the darkness with our other senses, and our intuitive sense especially. For too long, anything unwanted got thrown into the dark. Don't see that. Don't notice that. But also, the darkness is a place to go for activities that wouldn't be acceptable if they were fully seen or known. And I'm talking about corruption here. Corruption is an activity that serves its own purpose and doesn't want to be widely known or seen. So right now is a time to look deeply into the dark and find what actually doesn't belong here or belong there, both politically and personally. It's important to ask the questions and shine lights into the dark space. We want to protect, here in Maine, the dark sky and lots of different places. We don't want light pollution because with a dark sky, we can see the beautiful Milky Way and the aurora borealis. So this is not a war against the dark, but we must love the dark so dearly that we will not allow corruption to use it as a safe passage ever again. So now is a time of collective integration. Who are we with our fully restored inner darkness? This is not evil. This is balanced and whole. And we haven't quite yet looked into the dark and parsed through it. It's like searching around a dark space. It's like trying to sort a basement with no light. So we're opening the light and being like, oh my gosh, that doesn't belong here. This is not going to help anybody down here in the dark. So this next cycle asks us to release some truths. You know how you can be in a group of people and there isn't a balance of listening and speaking. There's some really brilliant minds that go unheard, like they're hiding in the darkness by not piping up, or their introversion is keeping them from wanting to speak in such a large group. And now is also a time, too, to bring some of those intelligences to light so they can be shared. It isn't just a corruption hunt. We're also looking for the voices, the ideas, the intelligences that have been silenced by the darkness too long. And they're now ready, in good time, to emerge like mushrooms. Okay, now let's throw the I Ching and see what we get. So, dear Oracle, lovely I Ching that I honor and respect so much and use so much in my life, how can we understand this time? How can we know about this next full moon cycle? And the hexagram that we get back is 57, subtly penetrating. How can you get to know this from the inside? What is taking shape? This hexagram is unchanging. And this is how the unchanging hexagram is described. So subtly penetrating is also known as the gentle. Without changing lines, the implication is that you must allow the object of your inquiry to influence you. Through a willing submission to the time and the situation, you will gain insight and perspective. You can then determine what is possible and harmonious within the current circumstances of your life. The I Ching also says, you are faced with a situation that can be influenced only by gradual efforts in a consistent direction. Gentleness is the key here. Violence and radical movement would only alarm and repel. To influence effectively, you must maintain clearly defined goals over a long period of time. Your efforts should be as inconspicuous as possible. Try to imagine and emulate the gentle, unceasing wind. Success will come in a gradual way, bringing increasing clarity of purpose. And this last little bit of interpretation I really like. Subtle penetration, or the gentle, describes your situation in terms of the penetrating influence of the one who carries out the fates. The way to deal with it is to penetrate to the core of the problem by being supple and adaptable. Enter from below. Let the situation shape you. Be humble and compliant. Adapt to whatever crosses your path. Take the pervasive action of the wind, or growing plants extending their roots and branches as your model. This is pleasing to the spirits. Through it, they will give you success, effective power, and the capacity to bring the situation to maturity. Hold on to your purpose, have a place to go, impose a direction on things, see great people, seek out those who can help and advise you. Think about the great in yourself and how you organize your thoughts. All these things bring profit and insight. So see, I love the I Ching. It makes me feel validated that the direction that I'm thinking in also matches the direction of the Great Spirit, or the Oracle, or the Divine, or the Unknown, or the Universe, or God, however you want to say it. So does that clear it up? Recap? Use the full moon that brightens our nights to look into the dark space. And when the eclipse comes, let that darkening of the night, of the bright night, give you a chance to look in and see what is hiding here, what's hiding in my darkest spaces. And let's let the light of the full moon light it up, bring it out, draw it into our consciousness, and see if that is a way of creating lasting and effective change. Okie dokie. I think that does it for this time. We are complete in this moment. I encourage you to go back to the last episode whenever you want for the grounding meditation there, when you're needing to bring all of this overwhelm into a centered place in your body so you can spread your attention and awareness from that centered, grounded place wherever you find yourself on the earth. Good luck as you peer into your own sacred darkness and gently bring what doesn't belong there to the light of your own consciousness. And know that there is a gentle, loving spirit behind this activity. This is not about rooting out and destroying things. No more destruction. We're just sorting, organizing, putting things in the right place, bringing some of the gifts that have been hidden to the light. That might be the most important part of all. May you be well. May all beings be well. May you know peace. May all beings know peace. Thank you for being here with me. You can find out more about me and my current classes and offerings at www.annhedley.com. That's ANNHEDLY.com. And as always, you can offer financial support to me through my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/watermoonstudios. Bye for now.